will have then two presentations. Isadora will be the first, and then Chiara. They are both working on Brazil. And the title of this roundtable is How Can Multispecies Ethnographies Challenge Mainstream Narratives About Wildfires? Insights from Brazilian Case. So Isadora, you want to present subsequently, or do you want to have questions after your presentation? Now it has been together, right?
We can present and then questions.
And then questions, okay. Okay. So we can start.
Hello everyone, good morning. I am Isadora, and together with Chiara, I'm conducting ethnographical research in Brazil. My English my English is not very good, and until yesterday I was planning to do this presentation in Portuguese, but in respect to those who don't speak Portuguese, I decided to take this challenge and do it in English. For that, I will need to follow my script. So I thank you in advance for your understanding, your patience, and also for the support from the ABIDE team. My goal today is to share with you some of the findings from this field experience, reflecting on the relationship between fire management, animals, and Xerente traditional practices and cosmology. To do this, I will present some brief information about the indigenous people studied, about the biome that makes up the territory, a short review of what the theory say about fire and animals in the Cerrado, and finally, what the Xerente say about animals. The Xerente territory is located in the central region of Brazil, in the state of Tocantins. Their land is divided into two indigenous territories, Xerente and Funil, as you can see on this map. Currently, they have a population of approximately 4,000 people dispersed in about 100 villages. The choice to research the Xerente was due to the relationship between the biome, where they live, and fire, and the relationship the Xerente themselves have with fire through the creation of the indigenous firefighting brigade. As you can see on this map, conducting field research with these people is a huge challenge because the territory is vast and there are many villages and people there. The points marked on the map are the villages where I stayed for extended periods, although I made brief visits to approximately 20 to 30 villages. The Xerente speak J language and refers to themselves as Aquém, which means people or human person. Currently, although many Xerentes still live in the territory, several chose to live in the city to access education, healthcare, or for other reasons. However, this migration brings challenges, as in seeking these resources, they tend to distance themselves from their traditions, speak more Portuguese, marry non-indigenous people, and gradually move away from the traditional customs. I will not discuss general aspect of social organization here, as that would require more time. And for now, I don't see a clear connection between kinship rules, marriage, and animals. The only relevant exception is the Dasimpe ritual, the naming ceremony for children. Although I have not yet attended this ritual, I know that it is when girls, called by them as Tare, receive their names, usually inspired by animals. The celebration lasts a month with activities such as hunting, buriti log races, and the appearance of anteaters. There is these people decorated to represent the animal. It seems for me very interesting because in some way it connects them with animals, but I don't know exactly why these anteaters appears, and it will be interesting to follow this ritual and you understand it better. Now, about the names, examples of these names include Sibacadi, which means huron bird, Cipriqui, that means bee, and Waiquadi, that means piranha fish. I myself received 2 Aquay names, and one of these names was Popradi, which means deer roof, given due to my interest in animals. And it happens during a firefighting action, which I follow with the brigade, and someone showed me open jatobá seed and explained that only the deer can break its shell. So this could be considered a deer track. After that episode and the many questions I asked, they started calling me deer roof. Besides the name ritual, there are other practices connecting the xerente to animals and fire, such as the wedding ritual, which involves hunting to feed guests, and the offering of animal tooth to the bride. Also notable are the crafts made from golden grass and buriti palm straw, which availability can be affected by fire. Just to mention some activities. And now I would like to talk about the biome where the xerente territory is located, because I think to understand the fire in this region is important to understand the biome and the fire in this biome. So about the Cerrado, the biome that composes the xerente territory is the second large biome in Brazil, only behind the Amazon. Known as the Brazilian savanna, it has similarities with other intertropical formations, but stands out due to its abundant water supply, hosting the source of 3 important South American hydrographic basins. This water potential generates high biodiversity, making the Cerrado the richest savanna in the world in terms of species. The Cerrado has dry winters and rainy summers, with most rainfall occurring from October to March. According to Ribeiro and Walter, the Cerrado has 3 main vegetation types, each with different variations. I will not detail these variations here, but I brought this image to show the varied landscapes of the biome. I cannot specify them, but there are several of these types in the xerente land. You can come back. Just to mention, I think for my observing, I think in the xerente lands we can find this area of mata de galeria or mata ciliar. They are usually exposed in the banks of the river, and that areas that in this image it seems like palmeiral, but they call it as áreas de brejoárias, and yeah, it probably many areas of Cerrado. In the Cerrado, fire is natural and important for the biome, unlike other parts of Brazil. According to studies, fire helped to reduce trees and allowed many herbaceous plants to emerge. Cerrado plants adapted to fire by developing thick bark and deep roots, so much that some people say the Cerrado is an underground forest. Some plants even use fire to reproduce, such as open seed or flowering. Fire in the Cerrado is usually superficial, meaning it does not burn the tree canopies and the soil and the surface remain habitable. But fire effects depend on the frequency and intensity which it occurs. If herbaceous plants go too long without burning, the fire can be stronger, potentially harming the ecosystem. Regarding animals, there is still little research, but according to Rodrigues, the passage of fire promotes growth of herbaceous plants, which benefits herbivorous animals. Other authors state that many animals take refuge on the ground during fire, but if the fire is too intense, it can reach those refuges. Additionally, fire changes the environment and can expose some animals more to predators. If fire occurs during fruiting season, food can be scarce for birds and others. Therefore, fire can be good or bad depending on the species, frequency, and intensity. Just a minute. I need to organize here because it's not very good. Based on this, researchers advocate for controlled burns in cerrado management. The Xerente firefighters use a technique called integrated fire management, which burn areas not burned for over 3 years, between April and June. Sorry. This management is planned and communicated to residents through a calendar. This one on the image. So between April and June, they do what they call the prescribed burns. July is the moment between the rain season and the dry season, so they don't plan anything, but they need to see the weather and plan what they will do during this period. And from August to November is the moment where they how can I say it? Fight against the fire. Now, the most important aspect of the research, the indigenous perceptions of the impact of fire on animal life, has also been the most challenging during the ethnographic fieldwork, for two main reasons. First, concerning the brigade's work, they say that the impacts of fire on animal lives are not severe because they believe the brigade's efforts have been effective in controlling fire intensity and frequency. They say that prescribed burns and firefighting planning allow for the creation of mosaics where animals can take refuge during large fires. The second point is that much of the Xerente interactions with animals occurs through hunting, an activity central to the tradition. The challenge here is that this information questions some protectionist perspectives, since hunting involves killing animals and is vital for the Xerente. This stance might lead us to see the Xerente as enemy, if not to us, at least for the animals, either because they hunt or because they would not be concerned enough about fire's effect on animal lives. I refuse to adopt this perspective academically or personally because, considering Brazil's historical, political, and economic context, I am certain that if the Xerente were not there, the entire territory would be transformed into plantation. Obviously, that would have a far greater impact on animals' lives than the hunting activities. Thus, my effort has been to truly understand the logic underlying human-animal interactions, especially those grounded in the Xerente traditions. And this is what I want to address now. At the last advisory board event, I spoke about the myth of fire, which narrates the origin of fire and the transformation of people into animals, creating various species. At that time, I raised a question that still accompanies me. Do the Xerente understand species or animal the same way we do? After more time in the field, I want to deepen these questions with new data. I will now start with another myth, this time about the peccaries, and I will brief this myth. So it says, one day, a hunter went to the Cerrado to hunt peccaries, but found none. Tired, he decided to return home when he saw a hole in the ground. Thinking it was an armadillo's den, he entered. The hole became a cliff and he fell into a beautiful field, a subterranean plateau, compared to where he had fallen from. Hiding behind a log, he saw many peccaries bathing and grazing, along with other game, like deer, tapirs, and capybaras. He was afraid, but amazed. When the peccaries noticed him, a female invited him to come down and accompany them to the herd leader. The leader said he could stay, choose a peccary to court, eat with them, and participate in an upcoming festival. The hunter lived this life with the peccaries. Later, the leader explained that when his people wanted meat, they should call him with a special song. He also warned that the next day they would visit the Aquan land where the hunter came from, invite him to join them. The next day, they toured the Aquan world, the terrestrial plateau, which was the opposite of the subterranean plateau for peccaries. They were subjected to a death trial, becoming visible to various predators, like the Aquan and the jaguar. The peccary leader told the hunter, the Aquan they saw hunting were spirits, the jaguar were predator animals. The peccary saw jaguars as humans saw them. The hunter wondered if peccary were humans like the Aquan, since they share very similar characteristics when they inhabit the respective terrestrial plateaus. Before allowing the hunter to return to his relative, the peccary leader set rules. When killing peccaries, only 5 or 6 could be killed, and the hunter himself could not kill any. If exceeded, he had to care for the wounded by removing arrows and helping them recover. If not respected, the leader would take him to live with them. If respected, he would live among his people until old age. The hunter returned to the village and saw his family was hungry. She called other hunters, and they went hunting peccaries, singing the song, and soon the herd appeared. The hunter shot, but the hero did not kill any, following the peccary's leader's rules. In the village, his wife complained she should receive more meat because he was the leader. On the next hunt, the hunter decided to kill 1 peccary for her. He brought the whole prey home. She was happy, but at night he got a fever, a sign he would die. He died and went to live with the peccaries. So much could be said about this myth, and there is an extensive bibliography addressing the relationship with animals in indigenous context. But I want to discuss this data in a much simple way, starting from more ethnographic positions that allow us to find answers to Abide's question. From my perspective, the most interesting aspect of this myth is to observe how much animals, in this case the peccary, share a similar life to that of humans. Although they are seen as animals through the Xerente human gaze, in the world they inhabit, they see themselves as humans, and for this very reason engage with the same activities and rituals as humans when they are in their own world. When outside the world, they understand the risk to which they are exposed, that is, who the prey are, who the predators are, and the spirits they must deal with. Through this myth, I believe the Xerente are also aware of the consciousness and agency of animals. They perceive animals as capable of understanding the dangers they face and of devising strategies to cope with them. If this is the case, then hunting itself must be thought of as relationship between subjects or between spirits. There are many accounts of encounters with animals' spirits during hunting activities. The risk to which animals are exposed are also risks to humans because, depending on the interactions they establish with these animals' spirits, humans may lose their own perspective or their own human life. The way the Xerente relate to animals invite us to rethink traditional view in which, on one side, there is the human being with destructive power, and on the other, the animal, fragile and in need of our protection. Often, we position ourselves as saviors of these beings, but this posture deserves self-criticism. In a context of climate change and increasingly intense fires, perhaps we are not even capable of saving ourselves. By claiming that we can protect animals, we risk reinforcing an old and still present anthropocentrism. The Xerente perspectives challenges to review this anthropocentrism in a deep and radical way. The title of this presentation, Tutelage and Autonomy, was chosen because historically, indigenous people in Brazil have been seen by the government as incapable of making their own decisions, treated almost like defenseless animals, and therefore placed under the tutelage of the state's indigenous agency. However, this imposed hierarchy makes no sense from the Xerente perspective. The recognition of animal agency may explain the gerentes' confidence in creating territorial mosaics. For them, animals do not need to be saved by humans, but have the capacity to save themselves. Moreover, they share knowledge about the existence of a forest spirit known as the sky porter, who takes care of these animals. According to the narratives, there is an enchanted place in the forest where injured animals are taken to be healed by the Kaipora. Although most accounts associate the Kaipora with hunting practices, the reflections remain. Might it also take care of animals wounded by fire? To conclude, I want to say that although the reality revealed in the research with the gerente was not exactly what I or the team had imagined, it can significantly contribute to ABIDE's proposal for multispecies governance. I believe that to move forward in this direction, it is not enough to simply include animals and their perspectives. It is essential to also incorporate indigenous cosmologies with their worldviews and ways of relating to the environment. I have some comments to do about this test, but I will leave this to the end. So I'll finish here. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So, as Isadora was saying, I'm also working on the Brazilian case, but I'm not working with indigenous communities, but with Maroon communities. And for those who are new to the topic, quilombolas communities, which is the Portuguese word to identify them, are communities that originate from enslaved people escaping the plantation system, the engenhos, and living in a more hidden places, very often near the mata, so near the kind of forest, places that they were more difficult to approach. And in these places, we're contacting indigenous communities, and as well as being always open to encounters and conflicts with the white colonizers. So what it means is that every community that actually has a very different story and a very different identity. But it also means that a lot of their ecology intersects with the indigenous knowledges. And we will talk about that because it concerns fire, for instance, the fire control and the fire system in the Rosas. Thank you. I worked with mainly two communities in Mato Grosso, which is a place of frontier, let's say. It's on the border with Bolivia, but it's also kind of imaginary Far West, and it's also a place of frontier between different ecosystems, different biomes. There is the Amazonia in the north of the state, the Cerrado in the center, and the Pantanal, which is a more humid area in the south. And I was working in communities that live very near the Pantanal. So in these places of frontier between Cerrado, which is, as Isadora was describing, is a more savanna, let's say dry place, dry ecosystem, prone to fires. There is a lot of movement of animals that live in between these zones. And I tried to circle in red the communities with which I worked, but it's a bit difficult to place them on the maps. One of them was nearby the city of Poconé, which is the entrance of Pantanal, and the other one was in Chapada dos Guimarães. They are just 2 hours apart, but a lot of things change. For instance, Chapada is a place where there was historically a lot of garimpo, a lot of diamond and gold diggers. So it's a place in which there is also another kind of relationship to the soil, to the earth, a lot of owls. And this also has an impact when combating and fighting against fires, because of these holes that are everywhere, it's very dangerous for firefighters to move around this area. And it's also a colder place. It's a bit it's kind of a altitude zone. And the 1 year, the Pantanal, it's a more humid place. It's a zone of pastos, so it's a grazing area. And most of the families that I met were working in these fazendas with boys, with vacas, with cows. Most of them are for the meat market. Just a few of them are milking cows, and most of the milking cows are just for family use. Thank you, Sarah. So Mato Grosso is a state in which Lévi-Strauss also went, and he wrote about it in Tristropique. And when he arrived, he was saying that there could be the word Mato Grosso could be a kind of a false friend, because you can imagine this mud, this forest, and you can imagine it as a very arborized area. But instead, Mato describes kind of a bush area, and this is the Cerrado landscape that Isadora was describing, in which there are shorter kind of trees and arbustos and taller trees, and it's a very diverse area. It's a very diverse ecosystem. In the past, it was also a very humid kind of landscape too, because there were a lot of streams, córregos, that are now getting substituted by tanks because of the grazing area. So the water tanks, these kind of dams that are being built, they are used to create these artificial lakes to give water to the soja plantations and to the animals, the cows, basically. And what it means that which was already a kind of a savanna is becoming even more dry with the time, because they are destroying all these natural streams. And then in Chapada, which was in the north that I was showing, it was known as a water-rich landscape. Most of the names of the places are Agua Fria, like they constantly reminds of the first impression that people got when arriving there, which was this really water-rich landscape, and it's now completely dry. There are fires every year. The most impactful was in 2019, but also last year there were very intense consequences. And when I arrived there, it was the chuva season, the rain season. And they were trying to understand if this year would have been another kind of disaster time in September, August. I wanted to show a short video. I don't know if we can. It's not showing there, so I'm a bit afraid. Maybe I can just put the sound here. Let's say if it works.
A questão das mudanças climáticas, ela tem interferido muito mesmo, que isso é nítido de se ver dentro das roças. Hoje você entra dentro das roças, dá dó de ver, chuva quase não se tem mais, tudo em decorrência desse cenário de mudanças climáticas, dessa destruição feita, ocasionada pela mão do homem. A queimada do Pantanal prejudicou muito, porque nem eu falava para as pessoas, morreu muito animal, dava muita importância para o animal. Só que no Pantanal também tem seres humanos, mora ali, a gente reside ali tem todo constituído uma família. Muitos perderam produção com a queimada que chegou e ninguém perguntou como que elas iam sobreviver em decorrência desse fogo que atravessou as roças, que dali vem a fonte de subsistência. Então assim, a gente fica muito triste de ver hoje a situação das roças.
It was a very short video, but I think it was interesting because the journalist is interviewing a woman from the Liderança, so one of the leader of a Quilombola community that is just half an hour from when I've been. And as I was saying before, every community has a different story to tell. In this case, the community is an Afro-descendant community that still keeps relationship with religions of African matrix, religiões de matriz africanas, and that has also kind of a more fighting spirit because it managed to get the recognition of the land. It's one of the first quilombo that made it in Mato Grosso, that has the land recognized. And what Laura Ferreira da Silva is saying in this short video is that when the fires have this impact in in this diverse biome that is Cerrado and this Pantanal, which is just nearby, the coverage of the news, as we were talking yesterday, focuses very much on the animal destiny. In this case, there are many onsans, jaguars in these places, and they make most of the mainstream narrative, or at least this is how the Quilombola communities feel. And this is very important to remind because these communities are not only racialized, but are fighting to keep the control of their own lands. And so these narratives have an influence, have a real concrete impact on how they can manage their land. And what she was also saying is that the fires not only have also an impact on animals, and we know the phenomenon of the grey hunger that is being described everywhere, and mostly and also in Australia. But the grey hunger, let's say, also impacts the human communities because they live off kind of subsistence farming, and they usually don't go to buy verduras, like fruit and vegetables in the nearby market. They are the ones to sell this kind of products, and they are the ones to consume it. So when the fire have an impact on the ROS, on these food gardens, it has an impact on the whole yearly capacity of subsistence of these families. It has a real economic impact as well as a social one. This grey hunger, so I was saying, kind of impacts both, and I think this is very interesting because it comes constantly in the narratives of these people. For instance, Senor Adriano, which is one of the lideranza, let's say, of the Quilombola community of Forquilla, which is different from the one we were listening to just now because it's a majorly Catholic community. But what he was saying is that after the fire, animals don't find any food, and the mata is also disappearing because of the growing grazing fields. So what happens is they usually get near the villages, near the communities, and they start eating the little remains of the food garden. So what remains, it's also being eaten by the wild animals. And what I find most interesting about this story is that they exactly know which animals eats what. So even if the rosa is kind of far from the house, there is a knowledge of the preferences of each species. So what the tucano likes to eat as a fruit, what the macaco likes to eat, and I think like in some bananeros, for instance, banana plantation, this could be indicated also by the traces that you find on the soil, but also on the remains of milho that you can find along the streets, so you can then try to understand who eat what. But for the birds, I think the major understanding comes just from direct observation, because the fruit trees are most of them are just in front of the quintal, so in front of the houses, and you could just see all day birds coming to eat every kind of fruits. And some of families even leave the fruits, just abandon the fruit trees to the birds, because they know they're very hungry, and they know they are not finding any other food in the mata. And so what they're saying is this is a kind of a new phenomenon, because before this kind of mega fires, and before this impressive desmatamento, the animals weren't getting so near the humans, and now they're pushed by necessity to kind of approach them, and being seen they are making themselves more vulnerable, and they are depending also on the humans letting them hit what they find. So it's a bit difficult to talk just about a conflictual relationship, because on the other side there is kind of a solidarity, a multi-species solidarity in these cases of anger. But it's also true that the humans have a material necessity on these food gardens. So it is something that, as the Quilombola Liderança that we listen to, we must always keep in mind. And this is why I think it's important to focus on the relationality of humans and the modern humans communities. I wanted to show this picture because these two pictures, so what is more interesting what was most interesting to me when I arrived there is that I arrived there with the idea of fire as it presents itself during this mega fires, so these uncontrolled queimadas that mostly come in the season of August, September, October. But then learning about these food gardens, the roças, you learn that fires was actually something that was an everyday presence, let's say, for the quilombolas, that have learned this technique of farming from the indigenous communities, and so that they use fire to grow food and to do a limpeza, so a cleaning of the land. Actually, it's better if I show the slide just after and then go back. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Sarah. For instance, here there is the Roça de Toco in a picture in which you can see that this limpeza, this cleaning of the land, it's not total. It always leaves some trees, and it leaves when they cut the trees, it leaves this toco, so these pieces of tree to kind of consume on the ground, to become part also of an adubo, of a compost. Yeah, thank you. And on the other side, so this is the impact of fire in cleaning the land. It's not a total cleaning, and it actually helps the organic parts to compost and to enrich the soil, and which is what also enables them to cultivate on a rotation system of like 2 years the same pieces of land, and then, at least in the past, deforest another part, abandon the precedent, which was called then what's the name of the Ross, and then the Kai. I know, but I will come back to me. But anyway, with this and this cleaning of the land was usually done in August, September. That I was saying is the month in which now you have these mega uncontrolled fires. So what's happening now is basically that these fires are not permitted anymore. There is a control that is impressive, because the IBAMA and this environmental association are using drones to control the fires, to see the origins of fires. And there is also like they can understand the origin of a fire through the satellites mapping, which means that the Quilombolas communities are feeling very much controlled. They're feeling that everything they do is it's been seen by the institutions, and there are being also multas, sanctions, fees that they have to pay in case the fire got uncontrolled or it was put out of season. So what is the impact of this? They're starting to use other instruments, because what it says, this fire is a work instrument. It is now being exchanged with a mechanized, with tractors, for instance. And then you can see this picture on your right. And this is another kind of limpeza. As you see, there is nothing left on the ground. As they explained to me, the tractor also has an impact on the capacity of the soil to absorb water. And this is why they are trying to find other techniques to enable this absorption of water. And in this case, for instance, the tractor has to do a kind of a U movement, going back and forward. But the difference and also the absence of tree that is necessary to use a tractor is very visible. We can go back to the. Thank you so much, Sarah. Here I wanted to show the impact of fire on these trees, because as Isadora was explaining before, actually the cerrado trees are part of this fire ecosystem, so they are able to survive fires. Not all of them, of course, but they have this capacity of regeneration after the fires. The problem is that now fires are becoming more and more aggressive. They last longer, and they lasting longer. They are able to not just stay on a lower high and just burn the newborn plants, but they start burning also the tallest trees. And in this case, these two pictures are from trees that are inside just in front of the houses, so it shows how near of the houses, how near of the living places the fire can get. And they shows also how high the fire can get, because the house is just below, and the fire can get up to 3 meters, 4 meters, and is able to, in this case, the plant survived, but it's not producing any more fruits. So this is also a case in which there is an absence of food, an absence of fruits that lasts a lot longer than the moment of the fire itself. The impact of fire in the food gardens is also, it's not only important for the compost, but also for the defense mechanisms of these gardens against invasive species mostly, but also against insects. So here I wanted to show you different pictures of what it was before. So before, when they used to use fires, there was this knowledge also of what kind of plants to use to protect for instance, mandiocas. So they used to put fumo, which is tobacco leaves, around the rosa to protect from invasive species. And the fires was also some kind of a purification instrument, because in case the rosa was effectively invaded by something, then following year this would be completely erased by the fire itself. And now, as they cannot use it anymore, they have this white moscas, these white flies that are impacting very much mandiocas. Every mandioca has now these verrugas in the leaves, which impacts the plant doesn't die, but it produces less than it should. And they are trying to come up with a different solution. In this case, Adriano is showing us the product that is using, the veneno, the agrotoxic, let's say. And what it was interesting is that they don't actually know the name of the products they're using. They are trying to be creative also around the doses and the frequency to use this kind of new products. And in this case, it was mixing it with water. But what we was using was actually a veterinary product that was meant to be used on cows, and he's using it in the rosas with plants. And in the last picture, this is Santa Maria and Teramicina, that are two plants that are also used that are planted in the food gardens, but are more of like a medicinal remedies. And yeah, I mean, I thought it was important because it shows that for me it was important because the food gardens not only enables a rotation and exchange of food and kind of plants and but also of remedies. And so whenever you need something, you can go to your vizinho and find a remedy. And this exchanges on an everyday basis in the community. then we get back to the animals. The idea of conflicts is central because what everybody's repeating is that in the countryside everything is dangerous. So people are living nearby jaguars, nearby cobras, and the impact of fire in the forest is as a direct, as I was saying before, the animals are approaching the aldeias, the villages, to find food, to find something to eat. In this case, the cobras are not only impacted by fires, but also by the agrotoxic industry, because they are noticing that cobras don't go where for instance, the social plantations are, or where a lot of toxic products are used. So they go through the roses, they go through the gardens, and they are getting near the people. And something that was impressive to see is how often you have cobra bites, and how often people can die or be amputated because of these bites. This kind of see. Okay. Okay, so maybe Serenos Encantados will leave it for another time. But what I wanted to show here is that there is a transformation of the relationship of space and time, and they always talk about this tempo de primeiro and the time of now. And this shows in the relationship with the animals, and not only with the animals, also with the Encantados, which we will leave for another time. But this is changing the multispecies relationship they are having with the animals today, because they are getting near, and they are also disappearing from certain spaces. So all this kind of transformation were like everyday talks, very present in the community. I would just conclude on a note, just to connect with what Isadora was saying about the fire brigades and the animals. So they are organizing fire brigades in the Quilombolas community as well as in the indigenous ones. There are also fazendeiros organizing kind of not illegal but non-official fire brigades to protect the land, the houses, and the people. And what this implies is also that sometimes these fire control techniques are very impactful on the animals, because, for instance, the contrafogo technique is the one that is used to use fire against fire. And what is being said is that the animals just stay in the middle of this kind of apocalyptic scene. They cannot escape, and they are just completely encircled by the flames. And this leaves space to the idea of recovery. So if it's really possible a recovery in this kind of contexts in which there is almost nowhere to escape anymore. Yeah, you can get to
Well, first of all, because of the brigadas, I was thinking that probably that will be a way of putting together the two researches through this specific case study of the brigadas, fire, which none of you have been able to completely develop, so but I'm sure you already have some data. I was wondering if that would be a possibility of making a connection between the two case studies for the project, for the aim of the project, right? So let me start, Isadora. Well, first of all, to say that you speak a very perfect English for communication in this situation, and that you are also, there is also a huge difference between what you presented some months ago and now. So it looks like you're really getting to be able to do this field work and to develop and to come to the themes that are important to the project, because it's not necessarily direct, right? So I have in some cases just a kind of a comment and then we later talk about it. But this connection to names, to personal names specifically, right? The use of animal names for personal names to children is a really key and very interesting topic to follow. And Aracy Lopes da Silva was work on the Chavante is like the pioneer one on this subject, and I think it is a very good idea to follow that path. It's a huge field of debate, but where exactly you discuss this subject point of view, right? Which is what you're also aiming at, which is to understand the subject point of view. And on that level, I would say that is in no way you will be able to go away from the discussion on hunting and predation in the literature, in Amerindian literature. If you're going to look at hunting, you will have to look at all this, the ontological paradigm of predation that is so important to understand many aspects in the Amerindian life. And about the myth, I think you do have there lots of possible paths to follow. Because on one hand, it is a narrative that talks about a whole, that talks about a very key aspect of myths that Lévi-Strauss already had found out, right? Which is this idea that people enter a hole and they go to a completely different world, right? So it's a very key and very well-known aspect. But in this case, you do have the fact that the forest itself is beneath the land. So I thought that would be, it is possibly, if you start asking about it, how do they or not make connections between the forest that is beneath the land and this hole that take you to a different world, because that's exactly what myths do, right? They use these narratives in order to make sense of many other things. So I think it's a wonderful possibility. I was wondering when and why the myth was told to you, because it is quite important in order to have a more close understanding also of the myth and putting it in your research. Now, I was curious about the refugee of animals. So what you talked about, as far as I understood, there is a very clear connection that you are making between fires, territory, and refugees of animals. So what are they talking? It's again another key aspect, I would say, to follow. And of course, just a final point also for you not to forget that the key article that changed anthropology since the 90s on the perspectivism by Tânia Stoss Lima was exactly on pecaris. So it's not every animal that take the point of view of humans, but the pecaris are it's very usual that they are seen as humans. So yeah, you can bring it to your analysis. Now, about Chiara's Maroon communities. First of all, saying that it's not very clear that people describe quilombolas as being people who escape from plantation systems. And in your case, it's really a wonderful way of coming to this what does this context mean in the context of research on multispecies and Anthropocene, and well, you're looking at people who come from this story of the plantations system, right? So I think it is a very good way of describing the case study. Now, the fact that in this video that you showed, that there is a moment in which she says, well, in Pantanal também tem humanos. There are also human beings in Pantanal. But I was thinking because of yesterday when you're presenting the media results and precisely what media were talking about Pantanal and the wildlife, right? So, and actually Pantanal is a wonderful biome and context to precisely discuss these humans animals relationship, because there are many works in anthropology coming out precisely to show how much it was inhabited by indigenous people, because there is always this idea that it's even more than Amazonia, this idea that it's a place only of the wildlife. So I was, I think it's a wonderful video to precisely take that discussion. Now, I was wondering if when you talked about multi-species solidarity, was that because of the birds coming to eat different kind of fruits, or?
It was because sometimes they intentionally leave food to them.
Yeah, exactly, to the birds. Mm-hmm. Yes, because I've seen colleagues doing that in São Paulo a lot. In order to make exactly not necessarily to feed them, but precisely to keep them nearby. So that you precisely contribute to the biodiversity instead of going away to other. So it's just to think what it means necessarily. So it can have to do, and can have to do with the theme that I also thought it was very important, and actually connecting your case with the Serra da Estrela one, for instance, because it really has to do with precisely what disturbance does to a territory, which is these boundaries between the human settlements and the cultivation context and the wildlife, right? That are completely being transformed. So. So precisely when you talk about this giving food to animals to come, it's because this space is being reconfigured, right? And it is something that connects with the Serra da Estrela case study, where exactly there is also this part of the problem is that these animals are coming too close to the house. So I think it's a very interesting theme probably to follow as a kind of research theme. And finally, just say, in the snake issue, again, and the snakes issue has to do with that too. So I think it's also, it connects also with this discussion. And finally, just saying, what you were saying about the fire. The fire is an everyday life issue. It is connected with slash and burn kind of techniques, right? And I was, what you were saying is something that we are listening a lot, coming from indigenous anthropologists and leaders. So, for instance, José Carlos Piratapuia, who was with us in the first semester, when doing his PhD and he wants to look at fire. So the first thing he does is to go and pick up the mythic narrative and to talk about fire and the good part of fire, and when in which situation the fire becomes a problem. So I thought that you are doing exactly the same. So this is a path that has to do with. It's a kind of you are doing the same because the people with whom you are working are also doing that, right? So they are saying, it's not the fire that is a problem. The problem is different, and precisely because. People in many parts of the world were being controlled and forbidden of doing slash and burn techniques precisely because they would be said that the fire would be a problem and the deforestation would be a problem. And this connects with with the fact that IBAMA is controlling a lot what they are doing. That is something that is very well known in many parts of the world, but in Brazil very clearly, which is that agribusiness has the power to do whatever they want, and the small, poor, indigenous, quilombolas will be constantly really in controlled of every environmental act that they can do. And in the 90s, in the context where I did fieldwork, that was a problem exactly. They couldn't cut half of a tree because the IBAMA was there, but then like 1 kilometer from them, the fazendeiros were deforesting a full area. So it's so that's that's probably an issue that you will have to deal with, this kind of power, the power of the state. And okay. Do you want to reply or to pick up questions?
I can just reply very quick to something you were saying just now. Okay, sorry. Just to rebound on something you just said, then we will have more time to talk about it tomorrow. But this idea of fire becoming a problem, it has to do directly with the privatization of the land. Because fire becomes a problem in the also measure it destroys something that is private and it has an economic value. So it's not just the impact on biodiversity, it's the impact on like millions of reais that are getting burned with the, and there is it's something that always comes back, like how many cows died in the fire. It's like something that also connects with the, I think, Portuguese cases. Like and in the past when there was a communal management of the lands, they are saying sometimes the fire was uncontrolled, so we collocated fire and then it escaped. It's not something new that happens only now. But when it escaped, it just kept burning alone. It was also consuming itself alone, and it was no one's problem because there was still a lot of forests, a lot of places we could, the animals could escape or that we could cultivate.
I'm thinking together with this theory, not just with the predation theory, but also other authors like Felipe Descolar about the animism, and also Teningold and I don't know if it's the correct pronunciation, but Brain Willerslev, because all of them are talking about. They help me to reverse this idea of animal autonomy, because they even say that these animals sometimes surrender themselves to the hunter. So I think this is very useful to think my material. And about other things, I will think more during the next steps of the research. And thank you for your comments.
Thank you for your presentations. They were really good, very interesting. I also think there's a lot of parallel with the Portuguese case. I saw several points which the project might want to explore or not. This thing about the fire being good or bad, it just led me to the question in the first presentation, because if the fire in the Cerrado is mainly natural, the fact of being good and bad and being natural or non-natural depends on the cause, like what's surrounding, because a forest fire is very different from mato, scrubland fire. So that was the question. I also thought about the Viveiros de Castro because of the hunting, which might be an important, or you can't escape from Viveiros de Castro, I think. When yes, yeah, because I didn't know that one. But concerning hunting, and somebody mentioned, and Chiara, in the Chiara presentation, very interesting. It just struck me this thing of because of the testimony of Senhor Adriano, the vulnerability of this isolated farmers after a disaster, or in ecological terms, after a change, a deep change in the ecological community, how coexistence with humans and non-humans become? What happens then? Because this approaching of animals, and this has a parallel in Portuguese case as well, the approaching of animals, it's to do with the disaster, but also to do with the community, the animal community that is left. And the absence and presence of other animals, which is big complex, much more complex in Brazil, but they kind of regulate each other. And until the equilibrium, if we can talk about that, I know it's discussable, comes, humans and animals are more face to face. So just wanted your comment on that. Thanks.
Straight away? Yeah, thank you so much for two brilliant presentations. I also saw interesting connections, of course, between the Portuguese case and your cases, but I also saw very interesting differences between your cases, because, I mean, on the one hand, we have the Xerente native people, and then we have the farmers who both use, like, land burning as techniques for farming and for regrowth, but they also, I guess, perceive of land burning as two different things, maybe. So I was thinking about Helen Barron's writing about bushfires in Australia and the traditions around those, where the firing is also like a deeply spiritual action, where the people engaged in the fire also learn about like the holy places that only these people using land burning know about in Australia. It's a way of like reproducing both the geography and the traditions and the mythologies of the people. So I wondered if, when you're comparing your two cases, do you see any differences? Is land burning, does it have spiritual connections in both cases, or just with the Xerente? It also connects to Susanna's comment about this, like this subterranean mythology of the Xerente, and whether that is also connected maybe to the traditions of the land burning. So that's, yeah, so basically like similarities and differences between your two cases, if you want to say something about that. And then also just a short comment that there's an interesting, like around 10 years ago, there was a debate in current anthropology, maybe you're familiar with that, but there was a debate around like hunting as gift giving. So can you say that animals give themselves to humans? What does that mean when you say that? And it was like almost a very like almost an emotional debate. So, and there was no final answer, of course, but it's interesting because you have these two positions where like, oh, it's just about the rhetorics, it's mere killing, and then the other side say, no, it's a deep spiritual thing where you actually have this sense of communicating with the animals that you hunt. Yeah, so thank you.
Because fire is very dangerous for animals, we thought the protection is necessary protection, because in plus for danger, like cobra, like other. Why is not by the protection by the animal? I said yesterday that protection is appointed by a state and by government. Because fire will kill all the animals. Like the inundation. Attention for people, but not attention for animal, and for that, and for cobra, and for another. I think it's responsibility. It's problem. Thank you very much.
thinking.
Okay, I think it was good to collect the 3 questions because they kind of, but there is a kind of, I will try to make a reply to all of them together. Just wait a second. So the idea of this equilibrium that has been broken by fires, for instance, and this coming nearby, like new kind of new vizinhos that are pushed, and this loss, for instance, of predators, or like the loss of hunting in the case of the Quilombolas communities, because they're living in between national parks, so they cannot hunt. So in this multi-species equilibrium of like predator relationships, there is something that was broken even before fires, and it was broken like, and this is why I would like to think fire in connection with agrotoxics, because they are very much connected, and this equilibrium loss is like, it's like all connected, and fires arrives also in the consequences of the agrotoxics, for instance. But in this equilibrium, I didn't have the time to talk about it in the presentation, but we have to talk also about more than human entities, because it's not just about human and animals or plants. There is also the seres encantados that are present in the forest, and that are part of this equilibrium. For instance, they have interactions with the humans. They can take children in the forest, or in the case of other seres encantados like the troa, which it's very difficult to describe, but it's no one sees it, but it can be heard, and it's heard as a scream coming from the forest, coming from the outside, and he is the one. I won't say responsible for fires, but in some cases, very much there is a clear connection between his presence, the presence of these encantados, with fire. Because he likes fire, and sometimes likes to put fire, and sometimes the people that have a connection with him are the ones that put fire, and they use this slash and burns techniques, because they have a particular relationship with him and with the fire itself. And this makes a lot more complex all this the kind of dualistic idea between the agro-industry and fires and the desmatamento. Like, it's a lot more than just this. And sometimes there are people inside the community that use fires to do something on the land, and sometimes the objective of this change, like what they want to, what this means for them, it's a bit more complex. I hope I understood, but yeah, I thought it was interesting to introduce in this equilibrium also this dimension, and this also allows me to talk about the spiritual connections with fires, as I was saying, and the differences with the Xerente. So in this community that are mostly Catholics, there are still this relationship with the another seres encantado that I didn't talk about is the boitatá, which presents itself as a ball of fire that is visible in the not the mountain, but like in the hills. So you just see these balls that appear and disappear. As they are Catholic, this allows me to reply to the last questions about the protection, and these are also the dynamic between inundations and fires. Like, they have the same consequences. They have these catastrophic consequences and these conflagration consequences. And the idea of responsibility. The idea of responsibility is really different between the cases that Isadora was describing, because in these Catholic communities there is very much this kind of hierarchical relationship in which the humans are the ones on top, and then the animals are something that is that doesn't have a soul, for instance, or that is something that humans must protect, because there is this I don't know if you are familiar with Pope Francis Laudatos, but they are very much read and commented in the communities. So these ideas of human responsibility in the climate change, in the Anthropocene, is something that is talked on a weekly basis, both in the church and in the spiritual groups, and that are take places every week in the houses. And it was different from what Isadora was describing about the fact that animals, now in a way, they have an agency that it's a bit outside of human control. In the case of Quilombola communities, this is a bit more nuanced, but there are some of these discourses as well. For instance, with the fish, because fishes that are disappearing because of the dryness, because of the fires, because of these changes, they say they will always come back, because fishes, the origin history of fishes is that they fall from the sky. So they are not impacted by what happens on the land. They will all constantly fall with the rains.
To comment about what Margarida has said, the difference between natural burnings and wildfires. I think there are a difference, but I don't know exactly how explain it. But as I see from the theory, seems that the thing is about this what they call as grass, is these herbaceous plants or mato, and this natural fire is necessary in the Cerrado to burn this grass. So if it doesn't burn after 3 years, so these wildfires happen. So because of this, the firefighters are trying to control this grass. So this is their work, and the theory says the same. So the own work are based in this in the theory from biology. And I don't know if I could say more, but about the Viveiro de Castro, I don't know what to say, but of course he inspired my discussion. But I was thinking about that images I showed made from AI. Mm-hmm. So actually, after ask for these images,
It was you doing.
Yes. So I was experimenting, but after I asked for these images, I was thinking exactly about this perspective, because the myth are narrated from the human perspective, but the own myth shows how there are a lot of perspectives, so it can change all time. So we could ask for images from these different perspectives. So that images are specifically from human perspectives. About the David comments, yes, this is idea. These authors, what they are saying about animals give themselves to humans. The idea is to connect my discussions with it, and about the connections between my fieldwork and Chiara, specifically about the roças, the cultivated areas is the same. The Xerente use the same technique of burning this area, so, but in this case of the Xerente, they are controlling it. So now they are asking for the residents to ask for the brigade to burn these areas, not let the dwellers do it anymore. Is the way to control, because most of the wildfires start by they using this technique. So the firefighters, in theory, knows much more about, for example, the wind, and the aspect that can influence the fire. The how can I say it? The control of fire, but this is fora de controle. And I think it is. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. I think